Hey, what's going on? It's D Lils, and this is another episode of Spread State University, where we break down every matchup for this particular NFL week. We're here, it's NFL Week 1. We're going to get right into the data. I don't like to really prolong things. I like to get right into the numbers and the metrics so that we have time to respond from the viewers' questions. So we're going to get right into it. And before we get into the matchups, if you have not watched the video that breaks down all the modules for Pro Football Forensics, I encourage you to do that. That way you know how to use each and every module within an app to make the best prediction and really make the best plays for your sports wager or for your fantasy football picks. So without further ado, I want to get into some high level week 1 stuff before we get into the games, right? And so week 1's coming up. There's a lot of metrics that you should know about. We know right now that the Jets were selected for Hard Knocks. We've seen Aaron Rodgers in the group on Hard Knocks for the last few weeks. So a couple things with Hard Knocks. Since 2018, the team that is selected for Hard Knocks during the preseason is 6-0 against the spread. You can go back all the way to 2018 and you'll see every team has covered that week 1 game. We'll go back to that when we get to the Jets and Bills for this upcoming week. Another thing to note, we know that every year there's at least 6 new playoff teams throughout the playoffs. Last year was no different. However, let's talk about the teams that did not win the playoffs or did not get into the playoffs last year. Since 2017, 6 teams have made the playoffs at least once but missed the playoffs in a minimum of 3 consecutive seasons. So we're looking at teams that missed the playoffs year 1, year 2, year 3, but since 2017 have made the playoffs at least once. Okay? Now, during the same span, in week 1 of the following season, after missing at least 3 consecutive seasons, okay, those teams were 2-4 straight up and against the spread. Now, this is how I want you to analyze this particular metric. These are bad teams or bad franchises who have not won for a long period of time. Not have gone to the playoffs, whatever the case may be. When we take a look at what they've done week 1 after missing the playoffs 3 consecutive years, those teams typically do not win, nor do they cover. Now, here's the kicker. In this span, again, this is going back since 2017. During the span, 2 of those teams have won. What 2 teams have won? Well, the Washington football team, and it's the year they changed their name, and the Las Vegas Raiders, the year they moved literally from Oakland to Las Vegas. So the common comparison here, the only 2 teams that broke this trend are teams that were undergoing significant change in their organization. And that doesn't apply. These are the teams that would fit this metric this upcoming season. Atlanta, Carolina, Denver, Detroit, the Jets, and Houston. Think about that. Have any of those teams undergone significant makeover in the organization or maybe change ownership? It's not just a quarterback coming in or a particular player or a new coaching staff. It would have to be something significant, a name change, a stadium change, ownership sells a team, something. And I don't believe that in this set of teams that we see anything that is truly alarming from that. But just something to note. So we're going to get into the first 2 matchups here that we offer on the app for free. And then we'll offer that video on YouTube to the public, and then we'll go over the other 14 week 1 matchups for our premium members that are premium on the Pro Football Forensics app. So without further ado, let's get into our first matchup. It's Thursday night, and that's going to be Detroit at Kansas City. Right now, Detroit is a 6.5 point underdog to Kansas City being the favorite. The algorithm has this as a Chiefs minus 1.5, so it's slightly lower than what the actual sports books have it at, which favors the Lions clearly. And if we get into these metrics here, let's get into some of these metrics for this particular game. It's a lot of things that come to mind. First of all, Jared Goff, 6-0 against the spread in week 1. Jared Goff was a rookie in 2016 with the Rams a year before Sean McVay took over, and he has covered the spread every week he's been in the NFL. And I think that's something important to denote here. Also, since 2014,
When the Lions defeat the Packers the following game, they're 5-0 straight up and against the spread. This is going back since 2014. We're coming up on 9 years. In the past 9 years, and this is Aaron, most of the time that they have beaten the Packers, that was an Aaron Rodgers led team. I think there was one year in particular that Aaron Rodgers sat out a lot of games or nearly the whole season. But for the most part, this occurs when teams defeat Aaron Rodgers and the Packers, right? So again, since 2014, when the Lions specifically, some of that was Matt Stafford, some of that is Jared Goff. When the Lions defeat the Packers the following game, they're 5-0 straight up and against the spread. As you know, last year, Week 17, they took out the Packers and essentially ruined their playoff opportunities. And I believe the Vikings were able to not only secure the division and then let someone else sneak into the playoffs. So, just something to note. Patrick Mahomes has never lost a season opener. He's 4-1 against the spread, however. And when the Chiefs face a non-conference opponent at home, they're 10-1 straight up. What I believe is going to happen, I see the Chiefs winning this game, but I see Detroit covering, and I'm going to go with the score of KC. I'm looking at KC 34, Detroit 30. Okay, and it could even be a field goal game, but I do think that Detroit is going to cover that 6.5 points. Go ahead and lock that in. Now, from another free game perspective, and for this free game, I'll give you the line tracker data analysis as well, in addition to line tracker statistics. But the other free game that we're offering for this week is San Francisco at Pittsburgh. You already know, anytime that you have a West Coast team traveling to East Coast, the metrics are overwhelmingly 72% or more for that West Coast team not to cover the spread or win outright. And we're going to get into some of those more specific metrics. The thing here is, though, if you just base your pick based off of the algorithm alone, I'm going to tread lightly and be careful of that. The AI generated line is 10.5 points favored to San Francisco, which is way more than the 3.5 that FanDuel has it. And so I'm just going to caution you on that. When you actually take a look at the line tracker, that AI line is way higher than the DraftKings line and the PFBF line, which is the Pro Football Forensics on the house line. And so one thing I want to point out, anytime that you see the algorithm line higher than the sportsbook line and the PFBF line, is probably a good line, but leans towards the favorite. Okay, and in this case, that's San Francisco. However, I'm going to tell you why there's a couple things that are different. One, this line started at 2.5, and a lot of sports books have moved it down to 2, and you can find a 1.5 in a few places as well. You have Purdy coming off of a Tommy John surgery, essentially, coming back into the lineup. They are heavy. There's a lot of public money on San Francisco. Here's where I would caution you to be careful. The 49ers, since 2017, and for those who do not know, 2017 was the year that Kyle Shanahan started coaching the Niners. Since he's been the coach, the 49ers are 1-5 against the spread in their season opener, and when they're favored, they're 0-3 against the spread. They do not cover season openers, and you remember last year, they were overwhelmingly favored against the Chicago Bears, right? And you got to look at what's going on. Why do they start out slow? Why do they give up early season upsets and don't show that dominant effort that they have to build in over time? Typically, someone's hurt, right? You had a situation where you've had hurt quarterbacks. You have had a shuffle at running backs until Christian McCaffrey got there. You had running backs that were constantly hurt. They used Jeff Wilson. They used a lot of other people as well, Sherfield. And then from a just overall defensive standpoint, you haven't had continuity all the time. Defensive stars have been injured as well. So, very important to note. Also important to note, when Shanahan faces a top 5 DVOA, that stands for defensive value over adjusted. That is a Football Outsiders metric. When Shanahan faces a top 5 DVOA, rush team specifically, the 49ers are 2-5 straight up and against the spread. Pittsburgh finished number 6 last season. They don't do well with teams that stop the run and have the metrics to back up stopping the run. Also, since 2016, quarterbacks who have less than 8 previous career starts were 10, 1, and 14 straight up in their first week 1 start. Brock Purdy did not start week 1 last year with the Niners. This will be his first official week 1 start. And specifically for quarterbacks who did not have offensive coordinators, you got to know Kyle Shanahan is also the pseudo offensive coordinator for the Niners. Those players were 0-4 straight up. This has upset written all over it. Mike Tomlin is 26-10 when facing a quarterback with less than 20 starts, 3-1 straight up in week 1. I really like Pittsburgh to pull the upset here. I think that I just really like this game. Tomlin's he's only faced Kyle Shanahan once in his career. He's 0-1 straight up, but he's 1-0 against the spread. 2.5 points is small, but again, considering they are coming across country, Shanahan doesn't start out well. I see this as a surprise upset. I think that if you want to take Pittsburgh money at -2.5 even, I think they can win by a field goal. In terms of a score for this particular game, that would be tough. I'm leaning towards let's see right here, 20 starts. When Kyle Shanahan faces a quarterback with less than 20 starts in his career, his team is 15-7. He's never defeated a quarterback with less than 20 starts in week 1. He lost last year 10-19 against Justin Fields. Previous year, he lost 20-24 against Kyler Murray. He doesn't do good with these young, explosive quarterbacks, and everything that I'm hearing about Kenny Pickett right now favors Pittsburgh getting this win. Again, going back to a score, I could see a Pittsburgh 22, San Francisco 17. Okay, go ahead and lock that in. Now, if you are if you're just a regular YouTube subscriber, or if you're a free member of the app, thank you for listening in. If you're a premium member, enjoy the next 14 games. Thanks a lot.
For more facts on the game, be sure to download the Pro Football Forensics app for free today. I get the beat and I shred it.